There's been no shortage of Souls-like games since From Software popularized the genre. Each studio offers its own take, more or less faithful, more or less inspired. Wuchang Fall on Feathers, developed by Chinese studio Leenzee Games, falls into this lineage. But where many merely mimic well-known mechanics, Wuchang attempts to dress them in its own unique atmosphere, drawn from 17th century Chinese folklore and beliefs. If you've been following me, you know that Souls games are my guilty pleasure. It's one of the reasons I started on YouTube, and I like to believe I'm a content creator who can deliver objective reviews. And I'll tell you straight up, I absolutely loved my adventure with this game. Welcome, you're on the Gamers Corner channel. My name is John, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this full review of this new Soulslike. I received a copy of the game on multiple platforms, so in this review we'll be discussing PC, Steam Deck, and PS5 optimizations. Don't hesitate to subscribe if you enjoy my content. I'd also like to mention that there will be a tips and tricks video you absolutely won't want to miss to get a good start on your adventure. I have plenty of little pointers to make your life easier and, most importantly, help you avoid certain mistakes. Let's start with the gameplay. Wuchang follows the Souls-like tradition, with a demanding combat system, meticulous stamina management, and a semi-open, zone-based level design. This is certainly one of its first strengths. I'm an absolute fan of the level design, the way the maps are constructed. You genuinely feel lost. There are truly passages around every corner. It's full of mysteries, and it works absolutely wonderfully. From the very first hours of play, it sets a certain pace. No rushing in headfirst here. Every enemy can be lethal. There are traps, ambushes, and the confrontations are very well designed in terms of progression. You'll be constantly challenged until the end of the adventure. To answer some questions you might have, are there optional bosses? Absolutely. Should you fight them? Absolutely. The game is teeming with mysteries, bosses, elite enemies to discover, etc., which will grant you powers. These can be spells, skills, equipment, and of course, experience. It's the traditional system found in Souls games. When you die, you'll lose a portion of your souls, which will remain at the location of your death. You'll have to return there to retrieve them, but with a twist. The story also explores the theme of madness, and we'll find this reflected in the gameplay. Your character can descend into madness if you die too many times in a row, or when you kill humans. You gradually accumulate this madness effect until you completely succumb to it. You'll even see it visually on your character. Her eyes will turn completely red. So when you die, it summons your inner demon. It's a type of invasion. A powerful NPC will actually spawn at the location of your death. Note also that you can be invaded by this demon in certain areas of the map, especially when there's a valuable item to be found. You'll then have to fight this inner demon to recover your experience points. This provides a real little level of challenge because often you'll die in places where there are already quite tough enemies. Don't worry, however, about deaths that occur in boss arenas. You won't have to face the boss plus the inner demon. Also, unlike in Kazan, for example, the death spot remains in the arena. While I thought it was a good idea in Kazan to allow you to recover your souls at the entrance of the arena, here, unfortunately, your XP will be locked inside the arena. You'll have to try to recover them before starting the boss fight if you went into the arena with too much XP. That said, don't worry, because you'll immediately notice that boss arenas are quite easily identifiable. But let's continue with the combat feel. The peculiarity of Wuchang lies in its interchangeable weapon system and its madness mechanic, which I briefly explained, as it will also impact your stats. But as our heroine delves deeper into the supernatural, she will gain powers. You'll be able to obtain these by killing elite enemies and bosses, unlocking new combat mechanics. Regarding interchangeable weapons, this is called quick draw in the game. You'll need to accumulate celestial points by attacking enemies, dodging at the right moment, etc. You can spend these points to use spells, weapon skills, and also for a quick draw. This means that in the middle of a combo, by pressing a button, boom, I can instantly switch to a second weapon. We also saw something similar in the excellent AI limit released earlier this year. This allows you to create combo openings or chain attacks. For instance, starting with a very fast, quick attack with a small weapon, then finishing with a large two-handed axe, drawing it very quickly to deal enormous damage in a single blow. Regarding weapon categories, you'll find longswords, twin blades, spears, two-handed axes, and one-handed swords. These are the weapon categories. You can equip two simultaneously, so to speak. and interchange them using this celestial power. Now, on the topic of weapons, I need to talk about leveling. How does it work? In Wuchang, you gain XP and spend it at the campfire to level up, but this level gives you a point that you can attribute not to a single stat, but to a sphere grid completely similar to what we had in Final Fantasy X, but without the locks, etc. You have a sphere grid for each weapon type, and by category if you want to delve into magic, madness, etc. For example, you have a weapon type for two-handed axes with its own sphere grid, and you can progress through it. You'll need to use it wisely. You can reset it at any time, which is pretty cool, so don't hesitate to abuse it if you're struggling with a boss because you put everything into, say, the axe. It's quite slow, and you're fighting a very fast enemy, so you might need to change weapons. And if you haven't invested anything in twin blades, for instance, that would be a shame, so don't hesitate to reset and invest in twin blades. This covers flexibility and leveling, but why is this important? Because each weapon type has weapon traits. Weapon traits will define your ability to deflect or completely negate damage, as parrying isn't a default mechanic. For example, the two-handed axe cannot parry, but it can cause what's called a weapon shock. This means that by hitting at the same time as the enemy, you can deflect the majority of the damage you would have taken. This is a very atypical mechanic found in Wuchang. You have the classic parry system that will completely deflect an attack, and can even, depending on the points you allocate, as you can strengthen the parry to unbalance enemies, etc., perform counters, knock them down, etc. It works very, very well. It's very, very cool. Be aware that parrying is quite generous once you've unlocked the window. We're not at all on a Sekiro level in its surgical aspect and timing. The parry window is quite open, honestly, but there are still quite a few attacks that are not parryable, especially on larger enemies where it mainly consists of very heavy attacks. Weapons also have a bit of signature moves, like in Dark Souls 3, and in the sphere grid, you'll also be able to unlock 2 new types of skills. Note that these are called disciplines in this game, and you can interchange them depending on what you want. Next, let's talk a little about blessings. It's very simple. At the campfire, once you've defeated the first boss of the game, you'll unlock the blessing system, which allows you to strengthen your weapons. Not like a blacksmith system, but rather a system where you can attribute relics or stones to your weapons to reinforce, for example, elemental stats, deal more fire damage, or make counters more powerful, that kind of thing. Also know that weapon upgrades are entirely possible, and I love the system that's been put in place. It's actually done through the sphere grid. In the sphere grid, you'll have a square that says upgrade axes, and it will upgrade all axes from +1 to +2 to +3. You have different squares like this that can level you up. I believe the maximum level is 7, if my memory serves me right. So this will automatically upgrade all weapons of that category to +7. This is really cool because it means you don't have to worry, as resources are very rare. It often happens in Dark Souls that there's a weapon we particularly like, but it doesn't necessarily have the best stats, so we don't necessarily keep using it. Here, it's cool. You can really always enjoy your entire inventory because there are still many weapons to find, and it allows for a lot of replayability and diversity in terms of these weapons. Also know that when it comes to bosses, there's plenty to do. This is really a strong point of the game. There are a huge number of bosses and optional bosses. Frankly, it's a treat. It's not a boss rush, but in each biome you'll find about 2 to 3 bosses in addition to elite enemies, etc. wandering around. And it works wonderfully. Every fight is breathtaking, every fight is weighty, but I was never stuck, let's say, for more than an hour on a single boss. Each time I felt like I was progressing, learning from my mistakes. If it was too hard, I'd tell myself maybe I'm not in the right biome. I'd go back, try to find another shortcut, keep exploring, and that would allow me to progress. This is truly the essence of a Dark Souls game. That's why in Elden Ring, people who said, yeah, the open world helps alleviate the difficulty, always made me laugh a bit, because in Dark Souls you just needed to know when to turn back and say, well, if I'm not in the right place, if this guy one-shots me even with my best gear, maybe there's a problem. So please, this is a tip for all Souls games. Learn from your mistakes. If it's too hard, don't hesitate to turn back, look for other alternatives, don't listen to your ego, don't be foolish and stubbornly smash your face against a wall if it's a boss or whatever. Just turn back. You'll see. It'll be fine. Next, let's continue with tempering. What is tempering? Well, in Souls games, we always have consumables to imbue our weapons with fire, lightning, poison, etc. Here, it's a consumable, but it automatically recharges near the campfire, which is cool. We can really abuse it and experiment without being frustrated about using consumables and having to buy them again in stores, etc. So that's pretty nice. It uses a system called needles. All of this is at the campfire. You go to the tempering tab and you can equip needles on your weapons, and you can temporarily activate this consumable to, for example, ignite your weapon. There are many elements in the game. Lightning element, fire element, poison element, madness element, depression or something like that. It one-shots you. It's a kind of sudden death. You have a whole bunch of equipment that you can swap: helmet, gloves, armor, boots. Most importantly, don't hesitate to adapt. It's very important. Elements are extremely powerful in this game, so you really need to adapt depending on the biome you're in. If you see that you're in a swamp that causes bleeding or poison, equip armor that offers very powerful stats specifically for defense against these elements, because you will greatly make your life easier. I really insist on this. The elements are very, very powerful in this game. As for lifespan, in this kind of game, it's always very variable depending on your controller skills, and most importantly, are you the kind of player who stubbornly fights a boss for an hour instead of telling yourself that you should go explore somewhere else? It can range from 30 to over 40 hours, especially if you explore all the optional biomes. Yeah, but how do I know if I'm in an optional biome if I can't reach the end of the boss? Don't worry, you'll be told. An NPC will tell you, be careful, you might not be able to turn back. So you'll understand at that point in the adventure, regarding its narration, etc., that you're reaching the very end. There are also quite a few side quests to do. These are indicated by icons on campfire spots with characters who can give you a quest, etc. This is just to remind you that you might have ongoing quests in that area. You have quite a few NPCs, a bit like in Bloodborne, who will be confined to their homes, locked up, who will also drop dialogue lines and make you understand that there are things to observe, some side quests that are a bit more obscure than the other obvious quests. You are clearly asked, can you do this? Yes, no. You see, but otherwise, they will give you a few lines of dialogue, and it will be up to you to perhaps go back, talk to them to see what happens. NPCs move. The world doesn't evolve in the sense that the map will change, but NPCs will move from one place to another, so you might miss certain things.
It's a game that offers multiple endings. There will be no spoilers here, don't worry. But just know that there are multiple endings and no multiplayer. This can be a bit misleading, but in the campfire menu, you see something that says invocation. However, invocation is not at all for calling a player reinforcement, but it's actually for invoking a rare, precious item. However, it will increase your madness level, so you have to be a little careful with invocation. There are NPCs that you can call into combat. For example, you'll be given a flute, I think it's a flute or something like that, where you can call for help. But you'll be told it's not for all boss fights, and it's specifically linked to certain side quests. Now for the negative points. As you've seen, there are many positives. All of that is truly excellent, but I mainly noted 2 negative points regarding gameplay. The first point is the camera. This is truly an inherent problem in Souls games, and it's still not solved. When you're fighting large enemies, or when you're a bit stuck against walls, you'll get comboed, you can't see your character, you don't know what's happening. It's completely unreadable. And so, in this type of game, it's very frustrating. The second point is the character's recovery speed when knocked down. I find it very slow, and it's quite burdensome. I don't know if there's a weapon type in the sphere grid that allows for faster recovery or a quicker dodge. It might be a skill to unlock, I don't know. I leveled up to level 80 something, I went very high level. I farmed quite a bit, I tried to do all the side quests, etc. Anyway, I'm going to keep playing this game, but in any case, I don't know if it's a skill, so I'll put a small asterisk on it. But at least for two-handed axes, long swords, and also one-handed swords and twin blades in the early levels, I didn't see any skill to recover faster. And what happens is that when the enemy is in the middle of a combo, if you take the first hit and fall to the ground, by the time you get up, you won't have time to dodge before you take the second hit. And that happened to me many times, and it was incredibly frustrating. Now, regarding the story, I really liked Wuchang's narrative. I loved its lore and its atmosphere. All I want is to dive back into it again. So we'll talk about the story, but don't worry, there will be no spoilers. Wuchang's tale takes place at the end of the Ming Dynasty, in a transforming China plagued by a strange illness, a mysterious curse that turns humans into monsters. It's in this chaotic context that our heroine Wuchang embarks on her quest for truth and answers, as she herself is affected by this disease, which also causes memory loss. So the narration remains minimalistic, a bit like what we're used to seeing in Souls games, with story fragments scattered in dialogues, item descriptions, and environments. And if you're willing to delve into it a bit, you'll truly discover a universe rich in symbols. This historical period in China is also visually fascinating. I loved visiting these temples, these enormous statues. You see funeral rites, vengeful spirits, traditions of the occult, deities, etc. It's incredibly interesting, very austere, and the atmosphere is very heavy. It's truly Chinese dark fantasy. The lore and sound design are quite somber. In any case, I loved it. On the technical side, this is probably where we'll encounter a few frustrations. On PC, the optimizations are quite poor. At least at the time of writing my review, this is something I've addressed with the publisher. I've had the game for quite some time. I tell you in all transparency, and I know the team is working tirelessly on it, but the PC optimizations were really complicated. I couldn't play stably in 4K, I had direct FPS drops. In 2K, it ran perfectly. I'm equipped with an RTX 3080. I'll include my specs in the description. Anyway, so 2 things. First, I'm editing and writing this video on July 17th, so the game might be patched by the time this is out. They still have time. They might release a patch in the meantime. Second, the Steam Deck version is completely unplayable. As of making this video, you know I love this platform. This is the kind of game I love to play on Steam Deck. Shout out to AI Limit, which had an ultra-stable Steam Deck version right at launch. Here, when I press the play button, it doesn't even open. So in the meantime, I'll leave you notes with a precise date. I'll tell you, as of July 22nd, Steam Deck version still unplayable and still frame rate issues. But yeah, from an optimization perspective on PC, I clarify that it concerns PC, it's a bit complicated. Otherwise, visually the game is really beautiful and decent. We're not talking about a mega production. You've seen that it's 505 Games. 505 Games is a small publisher, and for me, they've largely met the specifications. So just keep in mind the PC optimization part. A playable Steam Deck version would still be really nice, but that's a bit of what I could tell you about the technical aspect. In conclusion, Wuchang Fall on Feathers is not the Soulslike that will revolutionize the genre, but it offers something different. A new ambition, changes that ultimately work very well, a coherent adventure, a very intense story, and a beautiful identity. For me, it's truly a game with a soul. This is often what we criticize in Souls copies. Well, this one, frankly, works wonderfully. So, it has a few small imperfections, especially technical ones. I talked about the camera, the optimizations, etc., but it's truly a delight. I recommend it without any hesitation. Honestly, friends, I can only advise you to get it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't hesitate to subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks to our first subscribers who are playing along, and welcome to the community. This was John for Gamers Corner. See you soon. Ciao.